Chair, council members of the BNRC. The report I'm about to go over today is our independent review of the aquifer test, which was conducted by BNRC in fulfillment of the record of decision. It was conducted back, the test was conducted back in February, and we wrote our report, released it about a month ago. And if you have not read it, I do recommend that you read it. It's been open filed so that everybody can get to it. It was the best way that we thought it can get accessible to everybody. And it is available on our website at www.nbmg.mtech.edu. And again, if you have not read it, I do recommend doing so. I'm Nick, and that is Gary. And I do want to thank Pat Kineen for making himself available to me for the last 2 days, because I have been bothering him quite a bit. And he has been in and out of the hospital, and his wife, who is still in the hospital tonight, and he's here sitting with us. So thank you very much, Pat. Again, all my effort and all of Gary's effort and the monitoring equipment that we used for this experiment were paid for by the Montana Department of Justice Natural Resource Damages Program for the members of the BNRC, and we thank you for your continued support. BNRC are the ones who conducted the test, and their consultants, Pioneer Technical Services, were the ones were the lead agency in doing so. And we also like to acknowledge EPA and its consultants, CDM, and the Montana Department of Environmental Quality. This really was a collaborative effort, and I don't want to make it look like I was the only one up there doing this, because I was really just part in it, and I do appreciate the chance of being invited to do so. And so the pumping well was located right by the Civic Center, right next to the locomotive there on Harrison Avenue, and it was pretty close to the Metro Storm Drain, on the north side of the Metro Storm Drain. And it is part of the Deep Priority Soils Operable Unit, and the hydrogeology of the site was originally characterized by the Remedial Investigation Feasibility Study, which was released in 2001. And it characterized the aquifer as discontinuous units of silts, sands, gravels, and clays, and it reported aquifer test data which had considerably low hydraulic conductivities. In the area of the Parrot Tailings Complex, it reported a conductivity of about 2.5 feet per day, which is on the low side. In 2004, EPA released its final focus feasibility, which reflected the same results that were published in the RIFS. And they went on to say that, it was due to the heterogeneous nature of the aquifer, and that these hydraulic conductivities were representative from surface to about 200 feet up below the aquifer. And also in 2004, the Bureau published Open File Report number 507, and they went out and they drilled deeper wells, and they were able to find a relatively continuous 15-foot thick gravel layer at a depth of about 35 to 50 feet below the ground surface. And they went on to report that, the nature of a gravel aquifer is, the hydraulic conductivities are much, much higher than 2.5 feet per day, and maybe you want to take a look at that. And we wrote our recommendations for the final focus feasibility study. And in 2006, the ROD was released, and in it they classified that zone, as a data gap, and required that a pumping test. Most of the sites, there was not a response seen in the shallow aquifer. And so these are the hydraulic conductivities that we came up with for the site, compared to the EPA estimates of 2004. And above Harrison, basically to the northeast of the pumping well, we came up with hydraulic conductivities of 120 to 640 feet per day. To the southwest of Harrison, or to the southwest of the pumping well, below Harrison, we came up with conductivities of 480 to 1,000 feet per day, and those average out to be 603 feet per day, hydraulic conductivity. And so those were the most important parameters we got from the Octosolve program, but also just pumping on the well tells you something about the aquifer too, and the nature of the response between the shallow wells and the middle alluvial wells tells you a little something about the aquifer as well. And in the area of the Parrot, in this area right here, that middle alluvial aquifer seems to be less confined and more connected to the surface than to the southwest of the pumping well, where that aquifer appears to be more confined and less connected to the surface. And so you take your hydraulic conductivities and you take a porosity of a gravel aquifer. We use a porosity of 30%. And you take your hydraulic gradient between the here and here, and you come up, you use Darcy's law, and you come up with travel times for groundwater. And you know your direction of groundwater flow. These are the generalized direction of groundwater flow. It goes through the site from the northeast to the southwest along the metro storm drain. And you're able to come up with a travel time between the center of the Parrot tailings and just right there. And in the middle of the aquifer, this is the farthest southwestern extent of our knowledge. We have no wells completed in the middle of the aquifer to the south or to the west at this point. So from here to here, it takes a molecule of groundwater 0.78 to 2.7 years to reach that distance. And so basically we concluded that the alluvial aquifer in the metro storm drain area, it contains these multiple zones of these high flow zones. The hydraulic conductivities in the middle alluvial aquifer, which is the only aquifer that we analyzed for, were anywhere on the order from 120 to 1,000 feet per day. Travel times were 10 to 1,000 times faster than were reported by EPA. And also the middle alluvial aquifer to the northeast of the pumping well was less confined than to the southwest of the pumping well, where it was more confined. And those were our major results, our main results, our main conclusions. And with that, I'd like to entertain any questions that you might have. Gary and I.
We'll go ahead from the council first, if we could. Then we'll open it up to the public. Anybody that has questions, if you step up to the microphone.
My name is Fritz Daly. I'm just a citizen of Butte that kind of cares about what's going on. And I don't know if there's going to be questions after, so I guess I thought I'd just come up and ask my question now. I guess from what I can read, I'm just an average guy, but I read a lot of information and I see a lot of information, and I'm concerned about this area. And I'm concerned about Superfund Butte, and I'm concerned about what it's doing to our community. I have serious concerns about that. And the question that I would have after seeing this data, after seeing the data that Pat, developed on, the water in that area being more contaminated than Berkeley pit water, that really says something to me. Okay. And I also read an article that I recently found called Cut and Run that basically said the EPA cut and run from our community. And I believe that too, and I've written that many times, I've said that many times, and I'm going to say it over and over again, probably until I'm not watching airplanes come in. But the question that I have, and this is a question that would be for EPA, And it would be when they get their chance to say what they have to say, so I'll wait till they have to say what they have to say. But I want to know what the hell they're going to do. That's what I want to know. I want to know, what are we going to do? We now know that it's a serious problem. We now know something needs to be done. And I want to know what they're going to do. That's what I want to know.
Well, I cannot speak for the EPA, but I think they had a chance to respond, so I think they will respond when their turn comes.
Nick, I've got a question. If you were to have a chance to further characterize the data, where would the Bureau want to go next, and what would they look at next in order to further characterize what they're seeing? Either below the lower contaminated unit or deeper wells, or I mean, where would you guys go next to find more data if it was required?
There were two parts to this task order that we signed on with the NRD. The first part of the task order was to do this analysis of the aquifer test. The second part was to do a fingerprint analysis. There were two things I wanted to do after the first pair of tailings report that I presented to you guys. I wanted to first do an aquifer test, which is now done, and then I wanted to delineate the plume from that was being pair of tailings plume. And Gary and I are currently working on that right now. We went out and we sampled a whole bunch of wells, and in all the aquifers, the shallow, the middle, the deep, and it's called a fingerprint analysis because you're using the chemistry to try and determine what the source of contamination of that, if there is a source of contamination, what the source of that contamination is, because the pair of tailings are not the only source of contamination through that area. There are other sources of contamination, but through that we were able to further delineate the plume. So we did that, and that's our next step. And after that, I think there is more work to be done, and there is more data to be collected. But right now, like I said, the extent of our knowledge from this pump test ends at the end of that arrow. And so, you want to learn more about between that arrow and the creek, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would just like to second that. What Nick's talking about is where I think we need more information is this triangle here between the creek and the subdrain. More groundwater elevation data, better groundwater maps, essentially in that area. Sorry.
It's just fine.
What do we know